Hello, so in last week's video, what? That wasn't last week? God, well that's the last time I mixed. So in 2 months ago's video, I made this dress that is right here, which is in my new nook, which we'll get into. But in this video, I'm going to be making this corset that I'm wearing here, which I always intended as both a historical costume piece and something I could wear more every day, hence this get-up. Slippers included, of course. So if that sounds like your jam, then go get a sandwich, I guess, and then continue watching this video. Okay, so with any sewing project, unless you're maquereteuse, you would start off with a pattern, and for any corsets or stays, I always go for my trusty and aptly named Stays and Corsets by Mandy Barrington, Volume 1 this is. I chose to do this 1735 to 50 fully boned corset bodice, and the great thing about these books is that you can input your sizing and then draft the pattern according to your measurements so it fits you perfectly. I won't go too much into the drafting process because I don't think it's massively interesting to watch, and don't forget I have to sit through these and watch this video as well. But basically, once I drafted the corset out, I traced around it with Tesco owned baking paper, because why buy tracing paper? And then add a 1.5cm seam allowance before cutting the pieces out. I then cut around them on my mock-up fabric and cut these out, and then sewed the 4 panels together. Also, I was eating an apple whilst filming this clip, and can I just say that I am appalled, or appled, at the range of motion I seem to have in my jaw. Like, that thing is opening like a snake ready for its prey. The jaw is practically dislocating. Okay, so I've now made my mock-up, but now that I've made it, I'm thinking this would be so nice as just a normal kind of history-bound top, and so I'm thinking I might chop off these flap bits, which I'm not sure what to do with anyway. So I've kind of drawn on my pattern where the new sort of end bottom of it would have to go, so I've just drawn vaguely in pencil. And I think I'm going to do that. And this is my fabric. I don't know what kind of fabric it is. I think it's some kind of silk blend, because it was my aunt's fabric for her wedding dress when she got married. And this is the only piece that's remaining, and I think it would look so pretty as a wearable corset. So I think I'm going to do that. And do that I did, but wait, I've just realised that to regular viewers I appear to be in a new and strange territory, as in I'm in a different filming location to where I normally am. And so without further ado, hello and welcome to my new sewing / office space. So long story short, my grandparents had a spare attic room which they have kindly let me use, and I wasn't planning on making any kind of renovation videos at all, because I don't want to come across like, ooh, look at me, I have a sewing room. So I don't have that many before photos or videos, but I decided that, you know, I like watching this kind of renovation content, so somebody else might also find this interesting, so hopefully you do. This is going to be in a kind of montage style, and then I promise we will get back to the corset.
You have proved that you fight well. Now you can join us.
Keep cut sequence. Wake up, check your phone. Ignore the alarm, you're still alone. Wake up, rewind the night. Who are you? But also kind of who am I? Wake up, check your phone. Pre-party for the apocalypse, don't forget to RSVP. Think about how the polar bears are running out of ice. But hey, this photo got a lot of likes. Get down, but don't feel down. This is why we can't have nice things, like a clean car or world peace. So have the sleep from your eyes and supersize your vibe. Wake up, check your phone. Wake up, check your phone. Smoke till you feel numb. Check your phone. Check your phone. Check, bomb, check, bomb. Dial the tone.
Okay, and now it's time for a cushion tutorial no one asked for, but my grandmother gave me this cushion with this cushion cover here of this French lady doing French things like eating pain au chocolat, because we all know that's all French people do. But I don't really love it, so I traced around it on this leftover cotton, which is really cute because it has these spools of thread all over it. Oh, and yeah, this tutorial is going to be ironless, because we hadn't unpacked the iron at this point, so after chopping around the shape of the existing cushion, I turned the 2 square pieces right sides together and overlocked 3 of the sides also together. I then turned and pinned a little 1cm hem on the open edge and sewed that down on the normal machine, and then, because I was feeling in a frilly mood, which if you're wondering is much like frivolous but with more lace, I added on these lace trim things to act as little ties, so I sewed these on, shoved the cushion inside, and voila, except I'm not sure I can use that word anymore after we ditched the French pain au chocolat eating lady. But yee, that was it really, and after sorting out a few final touches, this is what it ended up looking like. Cue the aesthetic music. Back to the project at hand, which was the cushion, right? No, the corset. So after cutting out all of my pattern pieces from the outer layer, I also cut them all out again from my lining layer of plain heavyweight calico. And then after that, you'll need to pin the outer fabric panels together and the lining panels together using the pattern layout in the book to help you. And after that, you need to sew down those sections you just pinned at a 1.5cm seam allowance or whatever seam allowance you have allocated. Now, because my inner lining layer didn't have a right or wrong side, it didn't really matter which way round I chose to do it, but you have to think about how the lining and outer layers will eventually sandwich together. So there's a bit of spatial awareness practice there for you. Okay guys, so we're on the floor. Oh hey. I've now obviously sewn both layers together. Not together, I've sewn both layers separately. So that's lining layer, and then we've got the outer layer, and I'm going to be putting them wrong sides together. And I think now I'm at the stage where I can draw on my boning channels with heat erasable pens, and then insert the bones and then put the shoulder straps on. To be decided, I think. Evidently, I didn't find it that much of a difficult decision, as then I went on to drawing on the boning channels onto the corset, which takes forever, and once you've done it, you can carefully pin the seams of the inner and outer layers together exactly, and then sew down the lines that you drew out. I always sew the channels in the same direction to avoid any bubbling of the fabric. Pippi's helping me sew. Yeah. Okay, so now we can move on to the boning itself, so plastic zip ties, which I've got a nail file for, because when you chop the bones to the size of the corset, you want to file down the top so that the sharp edges don't go through the top of the corset and ruin all of your hard work. Speaking of nails, you're going to have to watch my crusty dusty nails throughout the duration of this clip. Sorry, not sorry, this is not a beauty channel, apart from that time when I did show you how to do Belle's hair, but hee. So to measure the boning or zip ties, I just do them one at a time, holding the zip ties up to the channel itself and then cutting to size before filing the edges down and inhaling all of the lovely microplastics which I am releasing into the environment. I then made up a load of bias binding from the leftover curtains from my 1890s corset, as it was a complementary shade of blue, and sewed that around the edges of the corset. Right, so now that I have sewed around the bias binding here and here, I need to sew the bias binding around the very large, actually, armholes. So I'm hoping that I have enough, because I really dislike making bias binding and I don't want to anymore. So what I'm going to do is measure, cut off this end bit, then measure 1.5cm over the edge, pin all the way around, measure another 1.5cm on the end bit on this side, sew them together, iron out, and then sew them on properly. I'm not sure that made any sense, I was trying to be instructional, but what you should do is measure 1.5cm from the edge of the bias binding, Mark it and then pin around the entire armhole until the point that the bias meets again. Measure 1.5 centimeters on the other end and then open out the two ends and sew them together. This should ensure that when you sew the bias on, that it is one continuous and proper fitting loop rather than having ugly ends sticking out. Just make sure not to yank it too much as you're sewing it on because it is on the bias, so it will stretch. Top tips with Con. Okay, sorry, I'll stop with the singing now. I will never. Who do I think I am? Bloody Alan Jones. On with the tutorial. So for the stomacher thing, I just did the same steps for it as the main corset, drawing on the boning channels, sewing them on and then inserting the boning, and then adding bias binding to the top and the bottom. Then finally it was onto the front ties, which I firstly measured out and drew on before using this Pyram hole puncher to make the holes and hammering in the eyelets themselves. After that I used this perfectly fitting baby pink lacing, which I bought last year in a sale without really having anything in mind to use it for, and now it is matched with the perfect project. Perfect matches do exist, people. And now for the reveal. Hit it! Okay, so that's actually everything for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed watching it, and if you did, then you can subscribe and I'm sure there'll be a new video at some point. But for now, au revoir!